Up, up and away.
Here we go.
Up, up and away. Up, up and away.
What's up, people? It is Keenan. What is going on? Ready for another episode of The Word, and we got all kinds of crazy shit going down today. The first thing is, as you notice, the background is not our badass, super dope The Word background. Why? Because we were bounced. We had a fire drill today, and they've had this fire drill planned for how long, Kiki?
We were notified about a month ago, and we specifically sent an email saying, hey, can you, just so you know, we have a live show, like if there's any control that we have of not having it at this 1 hour of all these hours, then of course it happened then.
Exactly. It's killing me. So what happened is we're sitting there preparing for the show in our office at 10:05, 10:10, Keek?
When we decided to move, it was 10:20.
All right, it was 10:20, and we find out that this fire alarm is going to go off in the next possible 35 to 45 minutes. So we had to scramble, find a new place, find internet connection, the whole 9 yards. So here we are on the top of the Sphere apartment buildings. This is Max's, our boy Max's joint. Here you go. We got a beautiful, it's hard to see in the background, but that's Denver City. I don't know why that won't show up. But anyways, yes. So we're improvising, people. We're improvising. Thanks for showing up. And we're going to drop some good stuff today. So, Kiki, who do we got on the show today?
We have Mr. Seth Levine. He is one of the founding partners of the Foundry Group, which is a well-known venture capital firm that specializes in tech companies. So really exciting. I don't think we've had this side of, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, how can you best impress this kind of guy?
Boom, 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 boom. So I'm real excited about having Seth on. Seth is a personal friend. He is smart as shit. His firm is one of the best. As you stated, Kiki, it's absolutely one of the best out there. If you're into the tech world and you have some sort of tech-oriented, SaaS-oriented startup, and Foundry hasn't found its way onto your map, then you're missing something and you're not paying attention. Obviously, many of you know his partner, Brad Feld, as well. So we're going to drop some really good knowledge on startups and what it takes to drive sales in a startup. So I'm super excited for that. Any house cleaning stuff, Kiki, we got to address today? Oh, I got my Red Bull. I had to take a 12-ounce today because, man, I was stressed out when I got that, when I realized we had to move. Oh, I was stressed out. Didn't handle it well. But Kiki and Max, they were all optimistic. I was pissed. I was yelling at people. Whew. So they calmed me down. Kiki, what else? Do we have any house cleaning we need to take care of?
So, as always, you can, if you weren't able to catch this live, you are able to revisit on YouTube under a sales guide. If you can't find that, it's also on our www.thesalesguide.com. There's a Word section now. And inside that section, you can also locate our podcast version if you are on the road, on the run, you just don't have the time.
Okay, beautiful. You made me think of something now, Keek, and now I forgot what it was. But that's okay. It's not your fault. You triggered it, and I wanted to talk about something, and now I forgot. So, yes, we have podcasts. If you're not listening to the podcast, you need to be paying attention to the podcast. So you can listen to it in your car. I don't know. I guess we can jump in. I'm sore, though, today, Kiki. I'm really sore.
Tell them why.
So many of you know I'm doing a summer project where I'm trying to learn to do a mute grab 360. Maybe for another sales joke, we'll have a quick video clip of what that is. But basically, it's going off a big jump and spinning 360 degrees in the air while you're reaching down and grabbing your ski at the same time. And I took some diggers yesterday trying to learn. I hit that ramp about 20 times and landed in every contorted position you could imagine. So I'm making progress, and I'm sore. My back is killing me. All right, so then let's just, we have our first, we always kick this off with some sort of visual or some sort of funny video. I think we found a good one, Keek, yes?
Yes, we did.
All right, so let's jump into that.
All right, here it is.
Thanks for coming in, Nick. My partners are really excited. Hi, Nick. Can't wait to see what you got.
Thanks for having me. I will begin by showing you my inventions for transmitting electricity wirelessly.
Sounds great.
Hey, do you mind if Josh sits in?
Sure. Who's Josh?
Nice to meet you.
Josh is an EIR. He's thinking of starting a company in your space.
That does not sound great. Just leave out the part you're not comfortable sharing. Before you proceed, can you tell us a bit about the market? My inventions allow the wireless transfer of energy to power any device.
So this is a wireless play or an energy play?
Technically, hard to do two things at once. The inventions send energy wirelessly to any device, even mobile devices.
So this is a mobile play.
If this guy thinks he can go after 3 markets at once, he's crazy.
If you had to pick one market, which one would you pick?
Energy is the simplest way to think about it. Energy is not as hot as it used to be.
You can always pivot back to energy if it gets hot again.
Maybe you can keep things simple. What about some kind of tie-in to Facebook? Josh?
Totally. Or a Kickstarter campaign, maybe.
Oh, did you do a Kickstarter?
No, I did not think a Kickstarter was the right avenue for this business, given the product.
The product is supposed to be amazing. I don't see it on Kickstarter.
Apple is down $10. Really? I wonder what the market did.
Let me check.
NASDAQ dropped 110.
Apparently, the Fed might do something with interest rates. Have you taken any seed money?
We raised a small round of $500,000.
With?
Most came from an accelerator in New York City.
Hey guys, hate to say this, but I have to go. Nick, it looks great.
Thank you. We also took money from some professors. And Larry Page.
Wait, this is the deal Larry's in?
Why don't I show you the inventions?
How much are you looking to raise?
Between 6 and 8 million.
Wow, why so much?
Do you have a lead investor yet?
Again, this is why I am here. Mark said you like early stage opportunities.
We do. We just don't like to invest in them.
Maybe talk a bit about the team, Nick. We like to invest in teams.
We have some incredible engineers.
He has a great team. Have you looked into outsourcing?
We want the team focused here in the U.S.
How big is the U.S. market?
We can license the technology for hundreds of millions of dollars in the first few years.
Yikes. Seems small.
I think we're used to seeing numbers in the B's, Nick.
I bet we can flip this to Google 50 million.
Is there a deck you can quickly flip through on product?
I would love to show you the inventions.
Actually, it looks like I have to run, but we'd love this deal. Chat with Mark about it. If you can find a co-lead, I would say we are definitely in.
Awesome stuff. Definitely check out Kickstarter. Good luck with it.
Next time, maybe start with the deck.
I can't wait. Let's just get Seth in here and get his 2 cents on that, because I have gone through a round where I tried to raise money about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little more. It's actually how I met Brad Fell. I'll tell that story in a minute. But I remember I went through a couple of sessions like that, and I was like, I left thinking to myself, are you serious? These people get paid for this shit? But our boy, let me welcome everybody, Seth, the Madman Levine. He is a true master. I'm excited to have him. He is one of the smartest, kindest, most energetic people you'll ever meet. We met at an event. I think it was, Seth, what was it? It was like the glue or defrag, one of those conferences,
One of those conferences, absolutely.
Yes, and we met.
Well, we're both blowing off a session, and we ended in that, showcase room and just kind of sitting down. And I heard you talking from across the way. I was like, this guy's from Boston. I'm gonna go say hi to him. Which is funny because I said something to you about a Boston accent when we were out, a couple weeks ago, and you were like, I don't have much of an accent.
Clearly,
we'll let your viewers decide whether they think that's full of
truth. And you're from Boston, so we had that in common.
Boston, yeah. I sound like when I'm from Boston when I say some certain words.
But see, not only that in common, we have. So not many people know this, but Seth, tell them about your adoption, your 2 children, and that commonality we have there.
Yeah, when we figured that out, like really early on after meeting each other. But so yeah, I have 3 kids, but 2 of our kids are adopted. And they're both my adopted kids are from Ethiopia, and it turns out that Keenan was adopted as well. And so we had this, I thought, pretty intense conversation for not really knowing each other about, what is it like to be adopted by a white family as a guy with brown skin. And I thought that kind of put us on a different plane in terms of how we were talking and relating to each other. So I appreciate that. We still talk about that stuff. It's really it's hard, right? I mean, it's really important stuff. So yeah, no, it's a nice commonality that we had.
It's phenomenal. And I've really enjoyed the conversation. I'm excited to know that you did it, right? And I'm not going to take us too far off on a tangent, but I always find it fascinating to all my friends who are listening, especially my right-wing friends who try to argue this idea that racism is dead. The number of people who will adopt an interracial child when it comes to Asian far out exceeds their willingness to adopt interracial children when it comes to black. I had a friend, yes, that's right, Kiki's adopted by a white family as well. And we've talked a little bit about this. So when you told me you adopt black kids, I went through the roof because it's just so rare.
Yeah.
I have friends I grew up with who adopted, and they adopted an Asian child. I was like, why'd you do that? I mean, you know my whole story, and we have all these young black kids in this country that need to be adopted, and, you know, everybody has an excuse. I had another friend who just told me she wanted, when she was adopted, the cost of adopting a black baby is 50% of the cost of adopting a white baby.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So, I won't let us digress all the way into that one. We always have some good conversations.
You've got to know the person, and so it's a good way. You know, the fact that I have 2 kids that are adopted is a pretty important thing about me. The fact that you're adopted is a pretty important thing about you. And like, I think I think it's an important setup to the conversation, especially when you set me up with the Tesla video, right? I mean, my God. Everyone out there is going to hate me before they even met me. Like, holy crap. So I do get paid to do that.
So good. So once you run into that, so tell me, how much of you feel, let's talk about stereotypes, right? We're just talking about this whole idea of racism, which is stereotypes and reality, et cetera, et cetera. Let's flip it now on you. Have you experienced those? Is there some accuracy to that video and what went down? And give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that video is funny because I think that a huge portion of the industry kind of acts like that, right? And we see this all the time. People who won't make their own decisions, they're waiting for confirmation from another investor. You heard that in the video as a joke, like, hey, when you get a co-lead, we're in, basically saying, look, if someone else decides that we want to do it, they want to do it, then I want to do it. And this is just how a lot of our industry at least has been running. And I think, like going way back at even before Foundry, when I worked in Mobius, which is where I met Brad, Ryan, and Jason, my 3 partners, we had a thesis around sort of trying to help change the industry. We were not alone in that. Fred Wilson, there were a handful of other people kind of around that at the same time, like 2004, 2005, who were like, it's kind of bullshit the way that the industry works right now. And the industry was fundamentally built on this sort of information age, right, where VCs went through the pitch process a whole bunch of times, right? VCs did deals over and over and over, and entrepreneurs pitched every once in a while, right? They would do a deal every once in a while, and I think that we felt like the industry relied too much on this asymmetry, where VCs had all the knowledge, and they were trying to essentially hide the ball and like make the whole thing magic and opaque to entrepreneurs. And so, I mean, that was why, like way back, that was why I started blogging, right? I was an associate at the time at a big venture firm, and I wanted to build a little bit of a name for myself because I wasn't sure like what was going to happen next for me. So there was that side of it, and some of it was like, look, it should not be all that confusing, and we shouldn't make venture a black box. Like, we fundamentally believe, the 4 of us, and this is part of the founding ethos of Foundry, like, we believe that information and information parity was really important, right? You don't make money by fooling an entrepreneur into taking your money. And, I think the industry has definitely shifted, right? I mean, when we raised our first fund at Foundry, so we started Foundry basically in 2006. Ryan and Jason, they were living in California. Brad and I lived here. And they moved out in 2006, and we started working on, kind of what was going to become Foundry, figuring out a name, like getting it all set up like any company. And in 2007, we raised our first fund. And there was like no such thing yet as an emerging manager, and we were all relatively young at the time. Brad had a track record. Really, none of the rest of us. Ryan had, in the middle of 2007, he had a big exit, sort of creating a track record, but he had a limited track record, and Jason and I really had no track record. We sort of made one up for fundraising reasons. Kind of bullshit. And so there's no such thing as like emerging manager and young GPs and all that, and like it was unusual to have a VC that was blogging, and I don't know, it's like funny to think back on that, but we had a real tough time fundraising, I think, in part because there weren't pools of capital like there are now set aside for new emerging VCs. I mean, now you can list off 20 VCs that fit into that category, but at the time there weren't really any. And so, yeah, it was all a part of like how we wanted to do business, right? We wanted to make our own decisions. We talk about being syndication agnostic, meaning we don't care about. We're happy to invest with other people or not invest with other people, right? Mm-hmm. So that whole thing that just drives me crazy, which was part of that video. But there's lots of little things in that video that I think still happen, right? Where someone comes in to pitch and some EIR is there and they're sort of kind of working on something competitive and people are on their devices and not really paying attention, and and I like to think that stuff doesn't happen because of course I don't sit through a lot of other venture pitches, right? I mean, people come and pitch us, but I'm not on the other side of the table. But I hear stories about how different it is sometimes in the Valley. Now, I think there are great firms in the Valley. I don't think every firm acts like that, and I hope the industry itself is changing a lot. But that stuff drives me fucking nuts because I don't think it's, at the end of the day. So I'm going to just ramble because that's how it is. So one of the most memorable moments I've ever had in venture, I was still an associate, and I was at a cocktail party basically, and there was another VC there who I'm not going to name, who's not a bad guy either, but just he said something to me that just struck me, and he pointed to a guy who had been a CEO of a company that sold for a lot of money, and he said that guy should love me. I made him $50 million. And I actually blogged this.
Whoa! Stop! I want to make sure I understand this correctly. Because you give me money, you now made me money? Is that his logic?
That was his logic, right? And
did you punch him in the face? Did you punch him in the face?
I was like, you have it completely wrong, right? You made money off the entrepreneur, not the other way.
Amen. Praise be to God. Can I get a witness? Exactly. For you for recognizing that. Did you punch him? Did you punch him?
Well, that's a good. Jim, I'm not a big guy. I'd get my ass kicked.
But you're stealth. You're ninja-like.
Yeah, right. I'm fast. But that like really struck me. Like this was years ago, and I was like, this is wrong, right? And I think that like at Foundry we talk about entrepreneurs are the rock stars and we're the groupies. Right, and that's how I feel. Sometimes the industry is a little bit backwards. Like I think some VCs think of themselves as the rock stars, and of course there's a huge pun here somewhere because we've made these more rock videos. I was sure you were going to show one of those.
Good call. Oh, I wasn't even thinking. We blew it.
You totally missed it. Like in the second one at the very end, I'm in a like sequin miniskirt, lying on the front of some old car. Like I was.
God, you're right.
Wearing a blonde wig.
Yes, we can still pull it off.
You missed it.
You brought it up to my attention, so you're not safe now, Seth. I might find it.
Nice. Yeah.
All right. So let me steer you somewhere. All right. So so with all that said, how much of your portfolio is business to business? Roughly.
I don't know that we've cut it that way, but I would, if I were to estimate, I'd say probably 70%, a good portion of it. We have, it's funny because some of our highest profile wins have been B2C, right? Zynga, Fitbit, Robotics. We've got a handful of other companies that, Revolve, which was already sold as well. But we've got a handful of other companies that, particularly our device companies for consumer businesses. MakerBot was a B2C business. So it is funny. Now, we've had some B2B successes as well. In Spanning and AdMeld and others, but yeah, I'd say somewhere in the 60%, 70% range.
So much of this community is business to business salespeople, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, business to consumer can be massive, but the selling motion is entirely different, much more heavily related to market. So talk to me a little bit this. Where does and how do you look at a business to business company, your portfolio, or someone that's pitching to you? How do you see sales play a role, and what do you expect to see from them? Do you expect to see a sales plan up front? Do you expect them to drive revenue right away? What is your view from a revenue and selling motion at the very front end?
Yeah, so I want them to have at the very front end, I want them to have a hypothesis about product, about market, about who buys and why they buy, right? And then from that, they should at least have an idea about how they think they're going to sell, right? Are these people on the phone selling? Do they need to have what role is support and sales engineering? What do they need to have that function? Do they need to have a few people to go out and actually visit companies versus inside sales? Do they think that their sales is really a marketing function, right? And 40% of their sales are going to come from essentially from their marketing department. I want them to have a hypothesis around that. Even if that hypothesis is wrong, it tells me a little bit about how they think about their market and how they think about their product.
Do you think one of the founders has to be a salesperson, or would you prefer that they be a salesperson in a B2B space?
No, I don't think they'd have to. I think at Foundry, we're pretty obsessed with product, and we tend to gravitate towards founders.
Interesting. So our first little debate, and if can you hear me okay? A lot of background noise. Can you hear me all right?
Is that your motorcycle? Someone take it off?
Yeah, someone. All right, so let's talk about that for a second, because if you have real case scenarios to counter this opinion, I'd love to hear it. But unlike B2C, a B2B product, in most of the time, can't sell itself. Now, if you do the freemium model, okay, so you've got a Slack type of situation where one person uses it for themselves and they can spread it to another. But unless you have that type of network-oriented product, no matter how good the product is, somebody has to get it in front of someone's face. And having done Techstars a bunch of times, I've sat and watched. Like, I'm going through a couple now, and I won't use their names, but they're really cool. I don't see them making it, Seth, because they just can't figure out how to get in front of the CTO or the head of sales or the head of marketing to be able to get the traction. And if you got a product person, how do they do that?
Yeah. So I think what you're talking about is the Achilles heel of a lot of companies, right? Which is I guess the upside of being product obsessed is that you have a good sense of what you're building and who you're building it for. The downside is if you don't bring in some kind of sales talent to help you figure out how to get in front of that person, to your point, very few B2B companies actually have product that sell themselves. And most that do are really selling, like Slack kind of sells a B2C product, right? It's people in an individual group make the decision to buy Slack, and then Slack comes in later with more of a B2B sales that overlays that because they call enough companies saying, hey, you've got a lot of people using it. And we have a bunch of companies that sell a B2B product, but they're selling it at the low end of the market, and the buyers are buying it almost B2C type buying behavior, which are great companies, by the way, because if you can get B2B pricing with B2C pricing, or buying behavior, then all of a sudden you take off really, really quickly. There's a good example in our portfolio, probably the fastest growing company in our portfolio ever, is a company called Lead Pages, and they essentially sell, it's a landing page business, and they basically sell as if they were B2C, even though it's a B2B product. Now, as they grow and the product gets more enriched and more full featured, they are starting to go up market and bump into real sales challenges about, okay, how do we go to market? So I totally agree with where you're headed, which is you've got to have some idea. Very few products simply sell themselves in the B2B market, and you have to have an idea about how you're going to get in front of these people, right? And then all the way through the funnel, right? What's the top of the funnel, and how do you then bring that, those leads all the way down to people that are going to actually buy?
So if they don't have a B2C model to go B2B, right? I'm going to keep pushing on this a little. Why do you not demand or expect more salesperson as a founder or someone earlier? Because what you're describing, what they need to do versus execution, the gap between describing a go-to-market and an execution of go-to-market, in my opinion, is one of the greatest gaps there is. It is the hardest thing to do. To say, okay, unlike a product that says, okay, here's my product development process, and some guy starts to code, you own that whole process, right? You own the whole thing. But when you have a go-to-market approach, you don't own 50% of it. Like, you actually have to get someone engaged to participate with you, and the execution of that is off the charts. So why do you think not more startups or more venture capitalist firms demand that person up front? And if you don't, when should they come in?
Well, so I think the reason that you don't demand it, at least at the early stage, is that at the early stage, it's not that customer feedback is not important. And of course, a lot of companies do have salespeople or people that have some sales experience. But the most important things when you're starting the company are product and engineering, right? Can you build the product? Can you define the product, and can you build it, right? So that's why at an early stage, it's not quite as critical, and maybe it's just simply that there aren't a lot of salespeople running around that are co-founders, and so you just don't see them a lot, and so you say, all right, well, we've had plenty of successful businesses. Very few of them had a salesperson as a co-founder. We don't need that. We can hire in sales, right? And I think people feel like it's a lot easier to hire in sales and sales experience because B2B, there are a lot of people running around that have great B2B sales experience, and they understand how to build funnel, how to process funnel. There are fewer people that are obsessed about the specific product that you happen to be building because you're the one who realized, hey, there's a market need around this product. So,
that's a good answer. That's a good answer.
All of that said, Keenan, of course it's important to early on get in front of customers, right? You don't want to just start building and be a little bit off. We talk about like if you're like 3% off and you carry that out for 8 months,
that's a long way off,
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to be constantly iterating, constantly getting feedback, constantly putting product out to the market. There's absolutely no question. To the extent to which that's a sales function, sort of, then yeah, sales belongs in a business at an early stage.
So when do you think, or when do you recommend, or better yet, give me a trigger or two, because I want to make this as usable for people listening. Give me a trigger or two that founders should be paying attention to know, it's time to start thinking about bringing in a salesperson or a head of sales.
Ideally, the founder has enough sales DNA that they can, and they've got advisors like you, whoever, that they can go out and sell the first couple of deals, right? And once you have a product that you can sell and sell a couple of times, meaning it's not just a one-off thing and you just happen to find the one buyer who had the itch that you scratch, because that happens all the time, right? I mean, that's, you start going down, you build a product and you get a little bit of feedback. You got to be careful, because if the feedback's too myopic, you're just building this thing that like this one person or these 5 dudes want, right? What you really need to make sure is you're talking to a bunch of different people and you've got all sorts of feedback on how people will buy. But as soon as you start seeing that there's a repeatable process to be had there, that's when it's time to go and figure out your first salesperson.
So can you give a number? So like Aaron Ross, have you read Aaron Ross's Predictable Revenue?
No.
You should read it. It's actually pretty good, especially if you do work with a lot of SaaS organizations. Aaron Ross, he was a guest on here. Aaron, props to you, my man. But he does a real good job of, I forget his numbers, so shoot me in the head, but something like the first group of people is friends and family, right? You get them to buy it. So it's anybody you know, relationship in your strong ties, if you will. But then you have to be able to sell it past them. And he gives a number. I think he says, like, if you can get 100 people past friends and family, then you've got a viable product. Then you got to go from those 100 to the next. If you had to pick numbers, how would you decide when something is more than you're building for one small group of people, when you have a real product?
Yeah, somewhere between 50 and 100. I mean, it depends a little bit on your price point and what you're selling, but somewhere between 50 and 100 is the right point to start saying, hey, maybe I've got something.
Okay.
And the first salesperson that you hire is a really important person, right? Because ideally you hire someone who's got enough experience to do some amount of marketing, to do some amount of direct sales, who's willing to actually do the work, right? So finding, you may call that person the VP of sales, but you got to be really careful, because there are VPs of sales that want to manage and only manage, and then there are VPs of sales that are like, look, I'm going to go out and I'm going to really figure out the repeatable sales process here and understand what type of salesperson I want to hire. And then they hire, and you kind of hire incrementally. Like, there's an old adage in venture. I don't know if you've heard this, Keenan. I'd be interested in your reaction to this. But the adage in venture is that if you want to have your sales, you double your salespeople, right? Because sales early on it doesn't scale. And so you got to find the people that know how to do that are actually really special, right? So you've got to find people that understand how to build an organization incrementally and how to really figure out not just who to hire, but then how to train them so that they're successful. And then a lot of companies, as you get going, so not at the very, very early stages, but once you get going a little bit, hire in pairs, right? You hire a couple people at a time. Again, it depends a little bit on your sales model and sort of how much of a turn and burn, $30,000 base with some bonus, versus maybe slightly higher end salespeople. They have a little bit more experience. You're going, but you bring people in pods, what we call them in a bunch of the companies we work with, but in groups, but in manageable groups. So you don't fall into that trap of just like all of a sudden hitting go and hiring people. And the reason that companies fail, to say something super obvious, is because they run out of money.
Yes.
Right. And the number one reason that companies run out of money is because they have a couple of early data points and they start extrapolating about what that means, and then they hire too fast. And the number one area where people tend to hire too fast is sales, right? Followed by marketing, which can be marketing program spend as well. But people draw conclusions about what they know, what they think they know about their market and selling their product way too early in some cases. And instead of incrementing up, I can think of a couple examples of this just off the top of my head. Instead of incrementing up, they go, I mean, crazy big, right? They go from 4 salespeople and they go hire 10 more, right? And then sales go down because that's just you just can't manage that, right? And some of the assumptions they made were wrong. And so instead of hiring 2 more people and saying, okay, let's test those assumptions, they hire a whole lot more. And then all of a sudden you're burning $650,000 a month. And that money goes fast, right? You have $5 million in the bank, you're burning $650,000 a month, and that money, it goes away, right? That's 9 months of capital.
Yep. So
you never get that back.
I like the incremental approach, and I like it, 2 by 4 by 6. I like that. I cringed a little when you said if you want to double sales, you hire more people. And as I sat and thought more about it, I like half that statement, right? And this is what I tell my clients all the time.
Hiring more salespeople part?
No, the other part around, that you're going to double sales. There's this fallacy in sales, whether it's with startups or established companies, whatever, that growth, you just hire more people and you get the growth you want. It doesn't work. It's diminishing results when you hire more salespeople. I'm sure someday I could sit down and actually graph that shit out, because I don't know exactly where the crescendo is. It depends on a lot of different things. But I promise you that there's a point where, yes, growth can come from more salespeople, but you do not. Let's say you have 2, you hire 2 more, you could probably get 80% growth, maybe 90, close to 100. But if you have 4 and you hire 4 more, unless you're in an industry that's just freaking massive, you were Oracle back in the day, or Salesforce back in the day, when you literally have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of potential customers, you can't just double your sales every time. Some salespeople don't work out. You start to bump into competition. Some people have already been sold. They started knocking on the same door. So what happens is if you're low-hanging fruit, then you've got the next layer, and then you get the converters. You could almost use that crossing the chasm, bullshit to actually lay out how it works in sales. And so as you start creeping into those later stages, it takes longer to sell. The sales cycle takes longer. You have more challenges, et cetera. So you just can't double. You can get growth, but you can't double. And I think people try to build that at 2 salespeople, $1,000. 4 people, $2,000. 8 people, $8,000. No. It starts to diminish over time. People got to
exactly. So that's why you've got to increment up, and you've got to figure out where you are. Because I think the crossing the chasm, sort of early adopter, up through mainstream and then laggards, like that actually is how a lot of markets work, right? And so you've got to be careful about not just what conclusions you draw in terms of product from your early adopters, but also what conclusions you draw in terms of how the buying cycle works. You're spot on about it.
Yes. Exactly. Yes. That stuff affects the buying cycle drastically, and people miss it. Doesn't mean you can't penetrate the market. It doesn't mean you still can't be successful. But how long it takes you to move a sale through the process, how long it takes you to penetrate that market, and how much money it costs, the cost of sales, all plays a role in where you are in that scheme. So
exactly. Not to mention, as your company grows and you get bigger, especially if you're a B2B at a sort of a medium price point, at some point you got to figure out things like renewal rates, revenue renewal rates greater than 100%, and basically getting people to upsell, to buy more product, upselling your customers. That stuff starts to become more important, right? Because if you have a couple customers, it's all about selling new customers, right? But at some point you've got whatever your price point is, you've got 10, 20, 30,000 customers that are buying on a recurring revenue basis. Getting everyone to spend on average another couple dollars is as impactful as bringing on 20 new customers, right?
Yep. Well said.
You got to find the right balance and then figure out. So how do I structure an organization where I've got some people that are out, getting new customers, but other people are incented to bring the existing customers up to higher price points. Some of that's product, some of that's selling, some of that's retention, etc.
Good call. Good call. And where that is always interesting. All right, so here's another question for you. Talk to me. What expectation should a startup have for sales support from their investors?
Yeah. So the reality is, I think people think that their investors are going to do more than they as a practical matter can do, right? So investors are good for like high-level intros. Hey, we're looking to do a partnership, with this company. We'd love to talk to these guys about a distribution relationship. We joke like sometimes we send companies to or prospects to a company and they end up getting sold and we're like, yeah, ring the bell, that's awesome. But I think the reality is, like, you're not taking money because you think that those people are your best salespeople, right? So you have to have an expectation that the intros that are made by your board members, and this is true whether they've vested in you or they're just an outside board member, those are higher level intros, right? These are people that they're not actually out there carrying a bag selling for you. Now, you can leverage them for intros to other organizations that have faced the same sales challenges, right? And I think one of the things that VCs, if they're thinking and have their eyes open, of course, what we're all trying to do is pattern match, one business to the next and say, hey, Keenan, it looks like you guys are struggling with this, this, and this. You should really talk to, Andrea, because she struggled with the same thing. And hopefully, you can make fewer mistakes than she made, right? So those are the types of things that investors can bring to the table. But having sort of that, I've had a few companies where it's just the drumbeat has been, you bring me more sales. Who can you intro me to? Who can you bring to the table? And it just sort of feels like, I'm on 12 boards. Like I don't, that's not necessarily the best.
See, that's why you need to have me on retainer, Seth. I mean, I don't know why I haven't pushed that harder on you, man. I mean, because I know companies like True. Look, guys, I'm selling Seth now. Watch this, beautiful. But I know that companies like True Ventures and OpenView, they have on-staff sales expertise that they loan out, put out, or whatever to help those partners or those their portfolio companies get over certain humps. So when I asked that question, I was sort of curious where you saw that line, right? Should, with this increase in B2B companies getting investments, should venture capital firms invest more in helping them with that expertise to get over those humps?
Well, first off, Keenan, I think you're the top number in my speed dial, right? I hope you know that.
Good, you're a good man. That was good. That was good.
Yeah, there you go. So, listen, different VCs have different models. So Foundry's model is super lean. We have 4 partners. We now manage well over $1 billion. We just closed another early stage fund like a month ago. But we don't have any other investors.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing. Like when we started Foundry 7-8 years ago now, I mean, this is not. I mean, obviously we wanted it to be successful. This has been a different ride than I ever thought it would be. It's been amazing. But different funds have different views. So so our view is the 4 of us do all of our own work. We don't have any other investment staff. We have a fantastic CFO and back office staff that helps us do a whole host of things around managing our fund, which is great. But for us, we don't have on-staff recruiters or sales consultants or even IT consultants and things like that. Other people have different models, right? I mean, at Andreessen Horowitz, they have lots of people on staff, and they bring those resources to bear on their companies. So, one model isn't necessarily better than the other. It's just this is how we like to work. Now, that said, we have lots of partner organizations that, people like you who we can call and say, hey, it looks like this company needs a little bit of help. And we suggest that to companies. Foundry isn't super, we don't think we run the businesses that we invest in, and this is a little bit, Foundry is a little different in some respects that way than I think other venture capitalists. Like, you take money from us, and we fundamentally we do 3 things as venture capitalists in the Foundry model. We make investment decisions. Which companies do we back? We hire and fire CEOs, right? That's effectively kind of where it stops. And then we help with exits. And so that's kind of our model. Like, we make our investments, so you place your bets. You place your bets on people, right? And if you have that bet wrong, we can talk about this in a minute. But if you have that bet wrong, you have to change, right? You got to hire someone new, and then we help with exit. So in that context, we give a lot of autonomy to the CEOs that we've hired, because as long as they're the right CEO to run business, they need to be responsible for making decisions around where do I need help, where don't I need help, right? So now it doesn't mean we don't sit down with people and say, look, it feels like you're struggling with X, Y, and Z. Here's some people that we think could be helpful to you. But at the end of the day, we're not super dogmatic about we're bringing in our, other VCs do this. We're bringing in our person to go and, really dig in on this function because we think you fucked it up, right? That just is not how Foundry works. Right? It's not that we don't want to be helpful to our companies. It's just not how that's not how we find ourselves, it's not how we think we'd be most helpful.
Okay. So what do you think about the sales automation space, right? So you're seeing it absolutely blow up. The number of so-called sales automation tools, right, that help. So you invested in one, Yesware, as part of your portfolio company, right? I consider that a sales automation tool. What do you think about this space right now? What do you think? Where do you think it's going? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so I would actually expand that. So I think this whole kind of marketing automation and the tie-in between marketing and sales, I think is absolutely blowing up, right? And as an investment area, I think it's a great place for investment. And we've made a bunch of investments in and around this area. And Lead Pages would fit into that category. Obviously, Yesware is a Salesforce function. And companies like Broadly, there's a handful of others that fall into this kind of marketing to sales stack. And I think it's great because I think it's arming both marketing departments and sales departments with much better data on who buys, why they buy, and how to get them through a funnel so salespeople can spend more time on the right prospects, right? I mean, there's the old adage in advertising is 50% of my budget is wasted. I just don't know which 50%. And there's a little bit of that in sales. Like there's sales, SFA has helped us get smarter about which prospects are more likely to turn into customers. But I think we're taking that to a whole nother level, right? Because we can start tracking funnel based on where they came in, what other attributes that business has, that you can then have, systems and go scrape their websites and figure out, here's 30 parameters of that business, yada, yada, yada. You get all the way down and you say, you can assign it a score and say, look, this is ready to be touched by a salesperson. This needs more lead maturation. I think that's super powerful for all sorts of businesses, right? And the reality is that, most businesses these days are small businesses.
Yes.
And there are many, 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 many more of those than there are these huge enterprise businesses. And I think we've seen, we've already seen basically two waves of this, right? So we had, the ERP packages, Oracle, SAP, PeopleSoft, et cetera, and they built these pretty behemoth systems that allowed really big companies to manage everything from HR to sales to customer onboarding to financials, right? Mm-hmm. And then that started to get modularized a little bit with companies. Salesforce is probably the best example, but there's a whole bunch of companies, Workday, et cetera, that built technology that was sort of modularizing what the ERP packages were doing. They were saying, well, look, you don't need one big package to do all this stuff because there doesn't need to be this kind of tie-in. And those are hard to get up and running, and they're super expensive. We'll take this down market a little bit. So those companies formed maybe 15 years ago or so, for the most part, and they were sort of calling it SMBs, but really they were kind of medium to large size businesses, like not quite the behemoth businesses that the ERPs went after, but still kind of medium sized businesses. And now we're seeing a whole nother wave of that with technologies that are enabling much smaller businesses to take advantage of those same tools, right? And even Salesforce, if you think about it, it's gotten pretty big, right? I mean, it's hard to set up. It's very fully featured, but the downside is you need to really invest in it, and that doesn't work for all small businesses, right? And so I think we're seeing sort of a wave 3, if you will, of technology that's being built now for sales and marketing. It's like the next step down from that.
Okay. All right. So when you look at your investments, or you look at some of the companies you've seen, what would you say is the best sales model you've seen with some of the startups either you've invested in or not invested in that really you felt maximized their probability of success?
Yeah, so I think the sales. So we're talking B2B, right? Because some of the B2C sales models have been just magic, which is great when it works. So when it doesn't work, by the way, you blow up a big pile of money. So I don't want to make it seem like B2C is somehow easy and it always works. It's actually a lot harder to get right, but when it's right, it's good. Yep. The sales models I like on the B2C side actually do look a little bit more like B2B models. Like I love product that has, I'm going to call them viral hooks, but I think that's overstating it a little bit, but that have very specific functionality that works for like an individual layer and then also works even better when you add more people into it, right? And Slack's a decent example, not an investment that we've made. Yesware, maybe even a better example of what I'm talking about. Yesware provides value for an individual, like hands down, it's a reason to buy it, right? I use it, and I would use it even if it wasn't a portfolio company. It provides even more value when you use it as a team and across a company, right? And so, and there are hooks already in the product that say, hey, you might want to use it this way, right? Use it more extensively. And that does a couple of things. One is it helps grow the size of your customer, right? An individual customer becomes bigger because I start using it and I say, hey, Keenan, we should use this together. and then, hey, our team should use this, and hey, our whole company should use this. So it does that, and then 2, it provides sort of natural stickiness into the product. It's really hard to rip product like that out. Lead pages is kind of the same way, right? You start using lead pages, maybe you got a webinar you got to put up, and so you need a super quick landing page, and you do that, but then you start realizing, wait a minute, I can capture the leads from that, and I can push them out to Constant Contact, and then I can back all those leads up, and then I can actually push these other leads to this other system that I need to use, and then all of a sudden, this becomes like the middleware, and there's 4 or 5 people at your company using it, and it becomes impossible to rip out, right? So I went from, hey, I'll buy the low-end product for $25 a month because I've got this webinar and I've got a pain point right now, and I go from that to this much more extensive usage, which I think is perfect, right? So those are the sales models I like the most.
So those sales models are product dependent. So here's my next push on good old Seth. It's product dependent, right? So if I don't have a product that lends itself to that, I need a sales model that will get me in front of the right people, that will, put me in a traditional selling cycle. Have you seen any, and so how do I grow that? What type of people do I find? Have you found anything? So the product doesn't lend itself to a B2C to B2B. That's kind of what it is, right? I'm Joe Schmo, and I'm sucking in sales, and I read an article that says, see who if your emails are read and send out automatic follow-ups via yes. Ooh, I'm going to use that for me, right? If your product doesn't lend to that, then what do they do?
Yeah. So there are lots of products in our portfolio that don't lend themselves exactly to what I just described, right? And so then you need to understand your sales function and your sales funnel, and you need to build. At the end of the day, right? I mean, for a business that's selling a repeat product, right? A SaaS-based business, effectively, your CAC to LTV, right? That's such an important metric, and you have to have a CAC to LTV that works. Right, so you can experiment around the edges of that, but you either need to get a lot of people into the top of the funnel cheaply and have a reasonable funnel process, or if it's more expensive, you need to do a better job of getting people through the funnel. So once they're at the top, they are much more likely to get to the bottom. But we have tons and tons of companies that spent a while and just got it fucking right. Sovereign is a nice example because they've been around for a long time. They have figured out how they hire in pods. It's 3 people at a time. They know how to bring those pods on. They've got a really good training process. They know how to bring them through the training. They know how many people they need to hire to have, if they need 6 new salespeople, so 2 full new pods, they know how many people to hire in order to get that. And they have a really robust both tracking system for who's doing what, and also a system to bring things into the top of the funnel or into the queue, so their salespeople can work those leads, right? Help Scout is another example. It's a help desk thing, which has a much more kind of traditional sales function. And I think the problem that people have sometimes when they are trying to build their sales function is that they allow it to be too scattershot, right? Because all they want to do is I got to make this number, right? I've told my investors that I'm going to hit this in bookings or this in sales this month. I don't care how we make it. And the problem is you're building a pyramid, right? So if the base of the pyramid is weak, then as the numbers get bigger and bigger, you just get further and further behind the 8 ball, right? You're sort of building almost like a Ponzi scheme, right? It's just if you're 1 month away from it all falling apart. And I've seen lots of companies make this mistake, right? They're just scattershot. They're just, people are working and, they're measuring the number of calls you're making, right? And they're like, hey, we're a machine. We've got our guys doing 80 outbounds a day, and here's how that's working. But they're not being thoughtful about we're actually targeting those calls. And here's how we segment our sales team. And it's regionally segmented, or it's industry segmented, or SIC segmented, or whatever it is. And what happens is they build a system that ends up being totally scattershot. And that seems to be working a little bit at the beginning because there's just so many people you could call. And then eventually it breaks down because you start hiring more and more salespeople because you've got to hit bigger and bigger numbers. And you have no fucking clue why people are actually buying your product and what your process looks like. You just know you need to do more and more marketing, right? And you hear it. And one good sign of that is when the salespeople start complaining about marketing, well, we're just not getting enough leads, right? Sometimes that's true. I don't want to minimize that, but sometimes that's a sign that the company as a whole is lacking a real understanding about how marketing to sales actually works.
Okay. All right, my man. So we have any questions? Any questions? Okay, so one last final question, my man, and I'm going to flip the script.
Okay.
With the people listening, paying attention, picking it up, what is your advice to a startup who's in the B2B space from a selling perspective? What's the number one thing you want to tell them and you tell them when they come in?
Yeah, so the number one thing, because we see things a lot, generally pretty early, is go sell some shit, right? I mean, what's funny, and maybe this is because a lot of these teams don't have a sales founder.
Oh, imagine that!
Now we're back to that, right? But you get these product and engineering guys, and they like getting feedback, but they're afraid to ask for money, right? So at the very early stage, you got to ask people to pay for what you build, because then you really find out whether they actually value what you've done, right? I mean, too many product development processes are like, hey, would you like to be, taller and better looking? Yeah, I'd love that. That sounds great, right? And they're like, well, wait a minute, you got to cut off your left leg to do that, right? And then, no. Okay, now when you really get down to it, but they never get past the, do you want to be taller and better looking? Okay, right? So anyway, that's maybe that's a silly analogy to it, but you actually have to put yourself out there, ask for money, right? Get people to actually write you checks and figure out, do I actually have something that people want? And a lot of early companies are just loath to do that, right? They're in beta. They don't want to, they got a lot of people using it, and, quote unquote, their customers love their product, but they're afraid to ask for money. And it's really hard for me as an investor to accept that people love your product if they're not willing to pay for it.
Because you don't have salespeople on the founding team.
Now we're back to that.
Exactly. Now we're back to that.
That's right. It's more business for you if they don't have salespeople on the founding team, right? They should call the sales guy and get going.
They should call a sales guy. Well, all I would tell them is what to do, and I'd tell them to go hire a sales guy, because I'm not going to sell for them. But I would tell them to go hire a sales guy, who to look for, or I would teach them themselves how to sell. I mean, look, whether we recognize it or not, but when someone gets in front of you, they're selling.
Sure.
When they brought their partner on, if one guy started, you've tried to bring another founder on, he sold them. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, everything is selling. Shoot, you're married to a great lady, Greeley. I know you had to sell your ass off to get her to marry you. So, I mean, it's all selling.
Exactly. Well, look, that's right. I mean, what you're saying is absolutely true. You're always putting yourself out there. If you acknowledge it and you actually go for it, then you're much more likely to be successful, right?
Yep. Amen. Praise be to God. You nailed it. Boom. All right. Do we have all right, so Seth. My man, this was fun. As always, fun to talk to you. Kiki, do we have a cut it out? You're on mute. You can go off mute.
So we do have a cut it out.
I haven't seen it yet.
And actually ties right in line with, it's right there. It actually ties right in line with what you guys were talking about with sales team and just not having a solid process to convert marketing qualified leads to sales qualified leads.
Oh, jumping on them, jumping on the lead. I don't know how much I can rant about this. This is an interesting one. So, Seth, normally on the show we have a thing called Cut It Out, where I go on a rant, something salespeople do that really pisses me off or is really stupid. Have I done a rant, Kiki, on salespeople calling up and offering no value? Did I do that one yet? 30 seconds of value? I don't think so. All right, so if I have, and this is a repeat, I apologize. But Seth, I know you experience this too. How many people call you up and ask for your time, but offer you no value for your time?
All the time.
Oh my God.
Incredibly frustrating.
It's incredibly frustrating. So people, here's the deal, and I blogged about this the other day, and so Seth, feel free, by the way, to share this blog post with anybody that does this to you.
Absolutely.
When you call me up, or you send me an email, people, or you send Seth one, or you send your prospect one, or you send anyone and this says, I would like 15 minutes of your time, or I would like 30 minutes of your time, you got to explain to me why the fuck I need to give it to you. Okay? I'm busy. Seth is busy. We're all busy. So we got it. You may have something I need. You may have something of value, but if you don't tell me what that is, if you can't structure your email in a fashion that says, oh, I'll give up my time for you, you're wasting even the 3 minutes it took me to read it, and cut it out. I'm over it. I'm busy. Seth is busy. Kiki's busy. We're all busy. We don't care about you. We don't care about your product. We don't care if you make quota. We don't care if you get your commission check. We could give a shit. All we care about is us. We are 100% selfish in this regard. And if I gave my time to every clown who asked for it, I wouldn't have anything else to do. So if you want my time, if you want Seth's time, tell us why we need to give you that 30 minutes of time. What is the value to us? Why should we donate to you? So listen, people, I'm going to break it down for this. When you ask for our time, you are entering into an agreement. It's like a contract, a verbal contract. In exchange for your time, I'm going to give you this. And if you don't have consideration, like all agreements need, I buy this Red Bull. In consideration, I give, damn, it's expensive shit, like $5. That's the exchange, okay? These Beats headphones, when I agreed to get them, I said, here, Dr. Dre, in consideration for looking cool on my show, I will give you $300. So when you ask me for 30 minutes of my time, you're asking for something, and if you got nothing in consideration for it, you're punking me, and I don't like being punked. So cut it out, salespeople. Make sure you're offering 30 minutes of value, or stop wasting everybody's time. Cut it out. I like that one.
Amen to that.
Hallelujah. All right, my man Seth. It was an absolute. I mean, you must get it all the time, though, right? Does it drive you crazy?
It drives me completely crazy, right? And we're trying to change this across the entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? The whole idea behind give first is give before you get, right?
Yeah.
And finding a way to provide value in that very first meeting, like it's critical.
Critical. I had some cat, right? I'll make this quick, but I almost lit him up the other day. I mean, if it was in person, I would have punched him. I had this dude send me a note, said, hey, will you take a look at my new product? Right? So-and-so said you'd be great for this. I showed it to her. She loved it. And I politely said, dude, I'm sorry. I just don't have the time. I'm too busy. He wrote back and said, well, how much for 20 minutes of your time? I said, look, my time is like $500,000 an hour. I'm not going to charge you. I won't feel right charging you $250, right, for 15 minutes. And he just pushed and pushed. I'm like, you know what? I like his persistence. So what the hell? I said, okay, send it to me. Well, I didn't get it to it as fast as he wanted. So he kept just, I loved his persistence. He kept pushing us. All right, this dude's good. He won't let this go. So let me get on this. So I took a look at what he asked me to. I wrote up, I gave him my opinion. I wrote it up. He went dark. I never heard from him again.
Wow.
Oh my God. So I had to write him a letter and say, what, did you get it? And I was going to unleash him. He goes, oh yeah, I did. Thank you. I mean, that's the type of stuff we're talking about. My time is valuable. Your time is valuable. If you're going to ask it, you better damn well offer something for it, and then thank us for it.
And then be appreciative, right? I like getting particularly handwritten notes, or not even. You can use like Felt, which is an app where you can write on your iPad and it'll send it automatically. But like I like getting that stuff back. It just is. It's funny too. I remember this. I used to do. I haven't done them in a while because I've been too busy. I used to do these community hours where I would like have 15-minute increments. And it was sort of designed for people just to come in and ask me, right? And it was because I was getting a lot of requests for meetings, but I felt they were only one way. And the ones that stand out are the people that showed up with something to add back to me, right? Whether that was, Jason from Ship Compliant, who's become a good friend, who was like, I brought you a bottle of wine. Like, they ship wine around. He's like, I brought you a bottle of wine. And it was so memorable because I'm like, no one ever fucking brings me a bottle of wine. Like, that was actually really nice. Or someone who just came in and said, hey, like, here's 3 tools I've been using that have been making my life more efficient. I just wanted to tell you about those, but now I want to ask you a question. Just like any attempt at being like, hey, let's just try to make this a two-way street is super appreciated.
Amen. You said it. So on that note, people pay attention. That sounds out of advice. Because salespeople, our job is to get people's time. So please offer something that makes it worth that time. No, amen. All right, so we are at the end of this session. Thank you so much. People, for those of you who don't know or those who are new, the word is starting to blow up. Seth is a phenomenal guest. If you have a startup, if you're in the B2B space, if you've got something, he's a man to follow on Twitter. He's a man to reach out to, but don't reach out to him unless you get some value to give back. We have some future guests to add to this, so it's just getting better and better. We have the authors of the Challenger Customer coming on in a couple of weeks. So if those of you remember the Challenger Sale, they have a follow-up book called the Challenger Customer. They're coming on. So that is going to be tight because the first book was slamming. Now this one's going to be even better. We have David Dunning. He is the author of the paper that recognized that we overinflate our sense of self, called Unskilled and Unaware. Salespeople and most of us, boy, this is going to be this is going to be crazy insightful as you start to learn how you view yourself and how off you are. David's done some amazing research on that. It's going to be great for salespeople. We got one other good person coming up, don't we?
Yes, we have Taunak. BombBomb and Yes Nerd.
Oh, yeah, we got a good one there. We're bringing 3 sales email platforms together to talk about the power of email. So that's going to be the CEO of Yesware, the CEO of ToutApp, and the CEO of BombBomb. So, guys, and we have a secret guest. Oof, we're so close to getting a secret major guest. We'll probably know in about a week, so we'll let you know about that. So if y'all have not been paying attention to the word, you are missing out. Until you can find such as podcasts, subscribe to the podcast. What else? Anything else? Am I missing it, Keith?
Just for those of you who are watching the live version or on YouTube, I put a couple of resources here in the showcase. One is that rap video of Seth and his other partners. If you want to check that out, that's there. And then also, I found this awesome. Like, on the Foundry Group website, they have a list of entrepreneurial resources. So just getting your game plan done so you're ready to present for the venture capitalists, and also like to be able to get involved with Techstars and all sorts of good resources there. If you're an entrepreneur, you should check them out.
Nice.
Love it.
All right,
Thanks for that.
Big virtual hug to you, my man.
Eamon, I love you. Thanks for having me on.
I love you too, baby. We'll talk soon, all right? All right, everybody. Until next time, peace. I'm out.